Day 6 of 1111, and that means it's part 2 of the neurodiverse journey that I started yesterday, this time focusing more on the ASD, the autism spectrum disorder diagnosis or non-diagnosis, and what happened there, and why I kind of have to start that again, that whole process, I think, because I'm not happy with the outcome. I disagree with the outcome. So I might read notes from here, but they're not notes as in scripts, because remember, this is 11 minutes and 11 seconds of speaking, stream of conscious, unscripted, and largely unedited. But I made highlights on the assessment report from the autism assessment because there were so many inaccuracies. So the interview that I had on Zoom was with a speech therapist. Speech and language therapist. And that was on Zoom, much like the ADHD one had been. But where, like with the ADHD one, I had felt comfortable enough to just be my natural self, where I felt allowed to go on tangents, but I felt safe to just speak in my natural way. I didn't feel aware of masking or anything like that. With the autism one, this woman got my back up quite early on by a number of things. Just her tone seemed quite dismissive and yet also patronizing. She kept calling me love, which I felt inappropriate. I felt that to be inappropriate and quite condescending. So I never relaxed in her presence. I never dropped the mask, or I don't know, I felt very hyper aware of the mask. Like, I felt aware of, it's so weird. It's like almost double masking, because I felt aware of trying to appear normal and then also wanting to show normal. I felt hyper aware of my behavior, essentially, like I was second guessing myself. Like, if I do or say this certain thing or act in a certain way, will she think that I'm acting? How will it be perceived? So I never dropped my guard. I just never dropped my guard, essentially. That said, when I looked at the report, she did say that she thought I had traits, she thought that I did have traits that met the autism criteria, whatever that means. However, the person who writes up the report did not meet me. The person who writes up the report and who makes the ultimate decision was a registered nurse, a man who I've never met in person or online. I spoke to him when he was giving me the results. So, like, not as an interview, not as part of the assessment, but just like once he had come to his conclusion, that's when we spoke for the first and only time. He had spoken to my informant. Isn't that just like a wild word for it? Like, informant, like, it sounds like so weird. Like, who's your informant? Who's your guy on the inside? I don't get it, and I don't like it, and not I've learned since that not all places use this weird method. So my informant was my mother, because that had been recommended to me, because she would be the person who's known me longest. A parent, someone in the family, would be somebody who's known you your whole life, because they need to be able to report apparently on things that happened a long, long time ago. Just so happens that I was worried about using my mother, but like I ended up going for it. I felt like it would be too much pressure to ask a friend to do it. So I was like, okay, my mum. But she is in her 70s. She has an unreliable memory. She has a long history of drinking too heavy. She's not a drinker now, but she was at the time still a drinker. She's been a drinker for most of my life. We all know that alcohol can mess with memory, and yeah, she's older. She doesn't remember things as clearly as she might do, and she had a TIA not long ago, and I think that's affected things in the mind as well. And also, she was a single parent. Hello, single parents, which like often means that you're doing everything possible to survive and to make sure that your child is clothed, fed, and sheltered. You don't necessarily always have time and space, bandwidth to pick up on the smaller details. That's not a criticism, that's just an observation. So this was the person who was relied upon by, this is as my informant. And also a mother is just going to remember their child as being perfect, or as like not having any faults actually. So it's unreliable for so many different reasons. And also each time she tried to raise something that she thought would be relevant, he was like, no, I'm not interested in that. He had a very strict agenda. So there were a lot of things that he didn't listen to her on. And ultimately, in the report, in his decision, he decided that I did not meet the threshold for ASD. And it's not like I have an objection. It's not like I have to have it, but I find that his report is inaccurate. There are lots of inaccuracies in the report, and I just think it's really weird to be assessed by someone who didn't actually do the assessment. Do you know what I mean? Like, why my informant's information is more relevant than my own information, because the person who actually did interview me was like more of a yes. So why is the informant's viewpoint more relevant than your own viewpoint of yourself if you're a grown-ass human being? Let's not even get into the ADOS, the test itself, some of the things that we were doing, like reading from storybooks and making stories out of inanimate objects. Just anyway, so the first line of his report says that the autism assessment included the autism assessment included a clinical interview with blah, 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 and relevant assessment measures completed by the patient's informant. I had no clinical interview with this blah, blah, blah person, unless what you mean by a clinical interview is the point in which you're telling me you've already decided whether I have or haven't got this thing. So that's like the first. And then after that, there's just like sentences repeated, like verbatim, like as if in error, just as like copied and pasted and repeated. I thought my dyslexia was playing up for a minute, but it's just like, no, full sentences are full on repeated more than once. And then questionnaires completed by myself and informant, in brackets, relationship not specified. where was the relationship not specified? At what point was the relationship not specified? And this theme, informant relationship not specified, continues throughout the report until quite close to the end, when he says that the mother was recently diagnosed with ADHD combined type. My mother has never been diagnosed or even sought a diagnosis for ADHD. I was recently diagnosed with ADHD combined type by the same clinical practice that is conducting this assessment. So I could go on, but I'm not going. I could go on, but I'm not going to. So I got this phone call while I was like on tour over the summer last summer, and it was on the phone. We're kind of setting up. It's crackly. I can barely hear him. I feel so angry, and it's taken 6 months for me to begin to think about revisiting it. But revisit it, I will. Thank you. 1111.